What is going on, guys? Jason Burke here, Styles Clash for Life, coming at you on YouTube, and today I've got some football focus. I was getting ready to cut my favorite horror films of 2025 video when the news broke a few days back that Coach Mike Tomlin, after 19 seasons, has resigned as the Steelers head coach and is stepping down and no longer coaching for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I had a feeling that if this was going to happen, it was going to happen several weeks from now, even maybe a month or two from now. Happening right after the season is pretty shocking to me. Tomlin making the decision to step down, to me, feels like he knew the organization wanted to let him go and the fans were calling for his job and all these things happened, or he wasn't progressing with playoff victories and kind of knew what the situation was and decided to mutually part ways, kind of, where Tomlin got to make the decision instead of being fired so that he could have some dignity and respect for his tenure, which I greatly appreciate. With all that being said, that's just my conjecture. Tomlin steps down after 19 years. I just wanted to quickly share kind of some of his stats, kind of his, the good and bad of his coaching tenure here in Pittsburgh, and kind of what this means going forward for the future. Everyone will look at Mike Tomlin in some different ways. Some people will look at the amazing regular season coach and the guy that had, was considered a good leader by all the players in the NFL, a coach that players want to play for, a guy that's known to roll with an iron fist in some ways, a guy that has won us games and taken us to division titles and or playoff games with quarterbacks like Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph and Mitch Trubisky and Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. He's taken us in the post-Big Ben era, or the seasons where Big Ben got injured, and still used backups to help get this team to the playoffs. He's been a leader of men at times. He's been a guy that has made the most out of bad situations at times. He's also been a guy that is known as somebody who doesn't really directly answer a lot of questions. He has a lot of euphemisms and a lot of random sayings and Tomlinisms. The standard is the standard and you don't live in your fears, and all the funny things that are said. Some love it, some hate it, some make fun of it, but Tomlin is a man of funny and innovative press conferences, whether or not they answer your questions. People know him for that. Others are going to know him as a guy who lost the team and lost some leadership, with guys like Antonio Brown and George Pickens and Le'Veon Bell having egos and doing crazy things and saying things to reporters or on Twitter, or doing things online, or having reasons to get traded away and losing leadership by some of the best contributors on the team not being able to be controlled by the coach. Some people are going to think of him as a guy who couldn't win in the playoffs, who lost 7 playoff games in a row, six playoff games in a row over the course of 9 years, something like that. So there's good and bad when you look at the reasons for Mike Tomlin being here for as long as he was. Some people are going to look at the fact that he never had a losing season in 19 years. And others are going to look at that and say that's just an escape hatch and just a fallback for people that love Tomlin to hide the fact that he wasn't winning playoff games. So very good regular season coach, very consistent coach, but had leadership ups and downs, lost some of the locker room at times, and didn't win playoff games, especially lately. So you can say he won a Super Bowl championship. Some will say he did it with Cowher's team, and it was Cowher's regime that won the championship. So there's ups and downs to Tomlin's run. I'll give you guys 2 quick anecdotes on my personal experience with Coach T in the times that I would go to the practice facility when I was covering for the team online. I wasn't employed by the Steelers or by the NFL, but I was covering for secondhand journalism sites and things like that. So I knew some people on the team. I was at practices and stuff like that. But two stories that make me most think of Mike Tomlin here in Pittsburgh. Number one, when I went to a Southside restaurant with a friend, I was wearing Steeler gear, and it was, I think, like a playoff season or something. And the owner and the cook came out and said to me, "Man, I love Mike Tomlin." And I said, "So do I. He seems really cool with the media. He's been very cool in answering questions. He's very approachable." They said, "Yeah, during the aftermath of the pandemic, when things were just getting opened again and our business was struggling to stay open, Tomlin and the coaches and a few of the players came in at Tomlin's request every single week to buy stuff and tip heavy and keep us open after the pandemic because he wanted local businesses to thrive here in Pittsburgh." And then 3 or 4 days later, a buddy of mine and I were going to eat at a different restaurant in Squirrel Hill. And this was just days afterward. And we were sitting there, and some of the position coaches came in. I think Danny Smith. I think the cornerbacks coach. I think a few of the different coaches came in. Mike T wasn't there, but I heard them talking to the coaches about Tomlin doing the same thing. And so I asked after the fact, I said, I just heard a similar story. They said, yes, Tomlin's been going up and down in Squirrel Hill to all the local businesses, bringing the coaches, bringing the players, buying their meals, tipping heavy, sending extra money just to keep the restaurants alive after the pandemic. So that tells you the kind of person Mike Tomlin is. Another thing, when I was going to get my last spinal fusion, I had a 5-layer spinal fusion last year, and one of the doctors that was recommended to me by the hospitals and by a few people in my life was the same doctor that worked on Big Ben, that worked on Ryan Shazier's spine. So I sent in a letter to the Steelers organization as somebody that used to cover them, to ask about this team doctor they talked about, to get their opinions. And Mike Tomlin wrote back with recommendations for this spinal surgeon that I wind up going with. So Tomlin reached out to me and made sure that I got proper care through this spinal surgeon, gave me good recommendations, told me the things that he thrived at, and it made me feel more aware and more assured that I could go have my spine surgery. So thank you, Coach Tomlin, for that. Those are, again, a few character things that I've had run-ins with Mike Tomlin and stories that I've heard directly about Mike Tomlin that make me think of his legacy in Pittsburgh, more than just the winning seasons, more than just being a coach under fire here in Pittsburgh, but that's my Mike Tomlin experience, and I will always support Mike Tomlin. So thank you, Coach Tomlin, for being the person and the coach that you are, and the leader of men, working with the media, working with the fans, and just being somebody that was consistently here in Pittsburgh trying to help us. So thank you for all you've done, and I will support you and follow you anywhere you go as a fan. I don't know whether it's going to be Atlanta, where he used to be a DC, or somewhere else. I think he's going to take a year off, potentially look at broadcasting for a year, and maybe come back in the next season after this one. So in any case, I'm a Mike Tomlin fan for life. Let's look at his stats real quick. 19 seasons. He coached from 2007 to 2026. In 19 seasons, he was 193 wins, 114 losses, and 2 ties. That is a .628 winning percentage. Pretty damn respectable and impressive. In the playoffs, though, he was just 8-12 in those 19 seasons. He lost his last 6 playoff games, was one and done in the last 6 Steeler playoff runs. His last playoff win was in 2016. He did win 1 Super Bowl for us here. He took us to 2. We won 1 in 2008 against the Arizona Cardinals and lost 1 in 2010 against Green Bay Packers. So 2 Super Bowls, 1 win, 1 loss. 8 division titles in his time here in Pittsburgh, won the AFC North 8 times. So those are the big kind of Mike Tomlin stats. Again, regular season wins amongst quarterback changes, keeping us competitive when Ben Roethlisberger was retired and the times that he wasn't here. But the playoff record is not terribly impressive. So that said, what's next for the Steelers? I've talked about personal stories of Tomlin. I've given you now all of his stats, which I think are pretty impressive for the most part. And now what's next? After 19 years, after 3 coaches in 60 years, Chuck Noll to Bill Cowher to Mike Tomlin, things would suggest that Pittsburgh is going to make a first-time coaching hire that is a defensive-minded coach, just like Bill Cowher, just like Mike Tomlin. That being said, there's a lot of names out there. There are 9 teams right now vying for head coaches. The first domino just fell as Ravens coach Jim Harbaugh just signed on to coach for the New York Giants. I'm glad it's not John Harbaugh because Jim Harbaugh, John Harbaugh, I confuse the Harbaughs a lot. For me, I don't want an old retread. I don't want to just sign some veteran guy as our head coach that's been around forever, been up, been down, got fired recently for being average or below average. I don't want a Harbaugh. I don't want someone like that. I don't want a John Gruden. I don't want some hard-nosed defensive guy that's been around forever to put his same system in. I want this to be a brand new system. Now, what does this mean for the other pillars of the organization right now? Well, it means change, right? Because usually when a head coach goes, the coordinators follow. The coordinators are products of the coach. So it means and stands to reason that Arthur Smith and Terrell Austin will be gone as well, which I think are major positives. Those guys had to go, in my opinion, before Tomlin. So those 2 guys going is what seems to be the future. As far as quarterback, that also likely means Aaron Rodgers is going to go. He was considering coming back to play for Coach Tomlin for a second season and play under the same regime to have more familiarity and try to push us toward a Super Bowl, being with all those pieces in place. Now that Mike Tomlin's gone, that means the coordinators likely go, which means now that Aaron Rodgers coming back to play for a brand new system, brand new coach, brand new coordinators, some new players for one season and then retiring for us to start over again wouldn't make any sense on our behalf or on Aaron Rodgers' behalf. So this means that Aaron Rodgers most likely goes and either retires or goes to Minnesota or wherever. So that means now that not only is Tomlin gone, but Austin and Smith and Rodgers likely all go too. So it's time for a retooling. I wouldn't say a rebuild. Just like the Ronies didn't say rebuild yesterday at the press conference, I would say a retooling. So what do I have here as far as potential coaches for us? Well, we've already brought in or are bringing in 5 guys to interview, and some of the big names that I'm looking at. Clint Kubiak. He's been a coordinator for Minnesota in a decent year, New Orleans Saints in a pretty bad year with not a lot of good talent, and is currently the OC in Seattle that has one of the better offenses in the league. He's done some really good things, fairly young, offensive-minded. I don't think he's been a head coach in the NFL yet, but he has been a coordinator in some pretty good places. I was pretty impressed with certain aspects of Minnesota. New Orleans, not so much, but Seattle, he's been great this year. And he's the son of Gary Kubiak, who's a famous NFL coach. Nate Scheelhaus, who has been involved as an assistant and is currently the Rams passing game coordinator. This is his first year as a coordinator. I think it was 2024, I think. I think he's either in his first or second year, but he's brand new. He's very young. He's worked his way up in a short time as the Rams passing game coordinator, and they've got a great passing game. They have done amazing things with Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams and that tight end group there. And now that Devontae's been hurt, they've been using a lot of other guys, different guys like Whittingham and a bunch of other receivers, like the third tight end they drafted. They've been using a lot of not inferior, but unused pieces to make the offense continue to thrive under Matt Stafford in the running game with Kyren Williams and Blake Corum. So I like to see a new, young, offensive-minded guy there. That's what I want. For our head coach, I want a young, offensive-minded guy that goes against the norm for us, but also then to bring in 2 very good coordinators that specialize in their areas. So Nate Scheelhaus was one we looked at. Brian Flores is going to be a heavily sought-after guy. He is currently the Vikings defensive coordinator. He was a head coach in Miami, I think, for a couple of years. Didn't really thrive there. I want to say, I think he coached for a couple of years in Miami. Hasn't done great as a head coach. But as a coordinator, he's been very, very good. He seems kind of like a Mike Tomlin type as a head coach. But as a coordinator, that's where he thrives. He was in the building a couple years ago, I think 2022. He came in as Terrell Austin's assistant. I was hoping he would replace Terrell Austin and stay in the system, but we let him go. And he went to the Vikings and started to thrive there. So I think he is probably not a guy I'm looking at as a coach, but as a defensive coordinator, that's one of my dream picks. Mike McDaniel potentially is OC. He's been a guy who's OC'd in different places. Again, I don't think he's had much as a head coach in terms of experience or thriving, but as a coordinator, I think he's one of the better offensive minds that's currently available right now that's outside of a team. So if I'm looking at potentially the best way to frame this, if I'm bringing in my dream hires as far as what's available right now, I'm looking at probably Clint Kubiak as the head coach, or Chris Shula as the head coach. Now, Shula is a defensive coordinator. Chris Shula is currently working for the Rams, and he has a defensive mind, but he is a younger mind, and he's working with a good group right now, and he seems very sharp and progressive, and he would handle the defensive side of the ball more than offense. So I'd bring in either Chris Shula or Clint Kubiak as my head coach, and then offensive coordinator-wise, I see nothing wrong with Scheelhaus, but Mike McDaniel is kind of my dream offensive coordinator right now. Defensive coordinator-wise, I think Brian Flores is a good fit and makes a lot of sense. Or Jesse Minter from the Los Angeles Chargers. He's currently their DC. Now, I don't know if Flores, who's Minnesota's DC, or Minter, who's the Chargers DC, would want to make a lateral move and go from DC to DC from one place to another. I don't know if that makes sense for them. But I think this organization is very desirable. In spite of the fact that we're lacking a quarterback right now, I think we have a lot of things systematically. We have a lot of things as a long-term, 6-time Super Bowl champs and, being around, as a stalwart forever, being in contention, 19 straight winning seasons, been to the playoffs 3 years in a row, even though we didn't win a game, still being in the dance counts for something. Being the Steelers organization has gravitas to it. Having a lot of pieces in place. Even if Cam retires, you've got TJ and Highsmith and Jalen Ramsey. Offensively, you've got a tight end group with Darnell and Pat. You've got a guy like DK Metcalf as a number one receiver. You've got two good running backs who can run and catch in Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell. You've drafted some rookies that have been impressive at different times, like Derek Harmon, like Y.A. Black, like Jack Sawyer. You've got a bunch of guys here. You've got, if you want to look at Roman Wilson and see what his future is like, you want to look at some big plays out of Calvin Austin. You've got some guys on this team that are exciting, and Pittsburgh has a lot of draft picks, 12 picks coming up in the draft, which happens to also be in the hometown of Pittsburgh. So with 12 picks, you can make a trade up if you want to get a quarterback. Now, I won't talk draft right now. I'm pretty excited about the prospects there, but this is a desirable job with a lot of guys who could be desirable here. So what do you guys think? Tell me in the comments down below. What do you think of as Tomlin's legacy? What do you think of Tomlin stepping down? I think it was the right time in spite of the fact that I like him. What are your guys' opinions on Mike Tomlin's run here? Do you think this was the right time to step down? And who do you want for your head coach and your coordinators? Who do you think are the right fits? Do you agree with mine? Yes or no? And why not if you don't? And who do you want here? And what do you think for the future in terms of who's going to be the stalwarts of this team? Tell me in the comments down below. Please like, share, and subscribe to these Pittsburgh Steelers Deep Dives. I'll be bringing you guys tons of coverage coming up. We're talking about desirable draft picks, desirable trade-ups and trade-downs, possible best guys at each position that we need on this team. We could use an offensive lineman, a wide receiver, a quarterback. There's a lot of things to look at. I'll be looking at all of those by position. I'll be looking at free agents. Who should we keep on our list? Who should we go after on other teams' lists? We'll talk about it coming up. We'll talk about it coming up. But until then, go Steelers, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, Mike Tomlin, for all you've done.